What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my in-depth analysis and builds guide for Flame Tribe Mordecai. So this time around he is a green infantry beast with 187 BST and he has got Fiery Fang as his preferred weapon. So this weapon gives him +3 defense, and at start of combat, if he's above or at 25% HP, then he can get +6 defense and attack in combat, and he can also inflict the attack and defense debuff on opponent based on 20% of his visible defense. Now this is visible defense because it says at start of combat. So whatever you see on the unit screen is pretty much the visible defense. So that's why Fortress Defense Res is actually not that bad of a budget skill that he comes with, and he can also get the follow-up negation against the enemy, which is definitely pretty nice as a tank. And because he's a modern infantry beast unit, he gets +2 attack, +7 true damage whenever he triggers a special, and also the tempo effect, which neutralizes any kind of guard effect or special acceleration of the opponent. So this makes overall Mordecai into a pretty solid and really tanky unit, because it cannot be understated how good it is, the fact that he can debuff the opponent's attack and defense by quite a lot. And Mordecai's defense is pretty high at base 43. And when you invest into him with the right skills and merges, he can easily inflict -10 attack and defense debuff on the opponent, which is absolutely amazing for functioning as a tank. And it can also help you deal with the defense-based flat damage reduction that we have seen in the recent times on units like Har, Brave Dimitri, Asker, and Spring Maria. So there's no cap to the attack and defense debuffs that he can get on the opponent with this kind of weapon. So stacking up his defense is definitely one of the best things that he can do. And Mordecai can also hit pretty hard with that base 43 attack, which also has a super boon in it, and his resistance is not the worst at 24, and especially with the attack debuffs that he can get on the opponent, he can definitely have a bit better magical bulk than you'll first expect. And his HP is also pretty good at base 48. The other green infantry beast that we can compare him to is gonna be New York Keaton, and he's definitely an older unit at this point. And New York Keaton's weapon is not the greatest. It does give him +5 defense and inflicts -5 defense on the opponent. And if he wins the defense check and if he has got more defense than the opponent, then he can basically just get the true damage based on the difference of that. And that could be at max like +7 true damage per hit. And because he's an older infantry unit, he doesn't have the tempo effect and he can only score as 180 BST in arena. So definitely a bit sad for Keaton, because Mordecai can just spam specials because of the tempo effect and he's not really hindered by guard, and follow-up negation as a tank is really good when your speed is quite low. And he can also score as a 190 BST unit for arena game modes. So that is really good if you want to build him up as a scoring unit for arena. And he does have a preferred weapon, and he is going to be quite competent as a physical tank, especially with this kind of weapon. So overall, I'm quite happy with how Flame Tribe Mordecai turns out to be. He's a really good free-to-play unit, and honestly I didn't expect a 190 BST unit just so soon after we just started Gen 7 with the Choose Your Legend 6 units. So he's definitely going to be a pretty good free-to-play scoring option for a lot of free-to-play players to invest into. And he's also very tanky with the kind of attack debuffs that he can get on the opponent. He can easily get like -10 attack debuff on the opponent, which is really good for just taking on the attacks. And he can also hit pretty hard with those defense debuffs, so his damage output is going to be pretty high. He can of course be used in arena like I mentioned with the scoring, but he can also be used in Summoner Duels S as a frontliner, and even in Aether Raids Chaos he could be used with a far-safe tank. Now unfortunately beast units don't really have too many options available for the inedible skills. Like if you want to use him in arena, he just has Blue Flame and Ether available, and that's pretty much it. And there are a lot of skills which beast units do not have access to or just haven't been introduced. So that is definitely going to be a bit of a bummer. And even though Mordecai's preferred weapon is pretty good, for the modern standards, it definitely lacks some things which would have made him so much better. For example, he lacks the guaranteed follow-up attack as a slow unit, so he has to rely on quick riposte, and his player phase is not going to be as strong as some of the other units who can just have the guaranteed follow-up attack. And he also lacks the -1 special cooldown in his weapons, so unfortunately he cannot retaliate back with instant bonfires, which would have done so much damage with his high defense and attack stat. And a lot of people have invested into many tanks at this point in the game, or they have invested into someone like Asker, who's also a beast unit, but he's colorless and he's just way better because of open domain and the fact that he can have that flat damage reduction. So if you have invested into Asker, who's pretty recent and he's used a lot, then you might not be interested into investing into Mordecai. I'm definitely considering him as an option for my own arena team because of his 190 BST scoring, because the arena ceiling has got increased quite a lot, and the highest scoring units in arena are gonna be scoring like 205 BST units, mainly dual Chrom and Ascended Idun. So while 190 BST is quite good, it's still like 15 BST away from the highest scoring units in the game. And if you want to invest into Mordecai, then you can definitely work on a budget for like limited hero battles, for Tempest Trial, and for Arena Assault. So you can simply give him Quick Riposte because he's a slow unit, so he has to rely on that for the double attacks. And you can simply run Steady Breath on him and run Ignis. And Steady Breath is going to be a pretty good Sacred Seal on Mordecai because of having that tempo effect in his beast transformation, so that can allow him to spam the special without really caring about the guard effects, and that can be really good with his high defense and also his good damage output. So you can definitely use Mordecai with this build. And in Tempest Trial, he's definitely going to be quite beefy. You can also experiment with some healing specials or just running Mystic Boost for the longevity. But if you want to invest a bit more into Mordecai with merges and Dragon Flowers, then the natural progression of this build is going to be using the tier 3 version of the Fortress Defense Res. Now this skill does increase his visible defense, and his weapon does need the visible defense for the attack and defense debuff, so it could help you in that regard. And Attack Smoke 3 is going to be a pretty decent skill so that you can get the attack debuffs on the opponent. And it is worth noting that Attack Smoke 4 is not going to be the best slotsy skill for Mordecai because he already has the follow-up negation in his weapon, so it's quite redundant to run the tier 4 version of Attack Smoke. It is pretty much just going to be giving you the visible defense and resistance buff after your first combat, and that's pretty much it. So you can just run the regular budget Attack Smoke 3, especially for a build like this, and you can just run Steady Breath. You can get Fortress Defense Res from the Divine Code, so that's definitely nice. You can also run Glimmer, honestly, at this kind of investment, because he's still going to be able to hit pretty hard and retaliate back with Glimmer, as it's a 2 cooldown special. With Mordecai's weapon taking in the visible defense for the in-combat debuffs, you might want to run double Fortress Defense Res, but honestly it's not going to be worth it because while you're going to be able to get the in-combat debuffs, you always have to consider the opportunity cost and what is going to be the trade-off. For example, with this build, if you take off Steady Breath, then he's not going to be able to spam, Ignis or even retaliate back with Glimmer. So while you can get extra debuffs with the visible defense, don't let that pigeonhole you to give him only certain skills that increases visible defense, because at high and max investment he can easily get like -10 and -11 attack and defense debuff on the opponent during the combat, especially if you give him like defense buff. So that's why you can just run some other skills to get the other effects, which are going to be really valuable to your combat. And that takes me to my next build, which is running attack defense unity in the slotty skill. Now, continuing on with what I said, you have to consider the opportunity cost, and in this case, not running Fortress Defense Res means that you're going to be able to deal with the attack and defense debuffs really well. While you can just run Quick Riposte, if you're going to be running him in a synergetic team with dragons and beast units, then he can easily transform, and you can just run Special Spiral in his slot B and set up Ignis with Steady Breath. So once the Special Spiral is set up, you can just retaliate back with extremely powerful Ignis, which is going to be devastating with the true damage that he can get out of his weapon and also with his high attack and defense. And his defense and attack cannot be debuffed with the unity skill, so that is really good. And a lot of null follow-up units are going to be able to double him, but with this kind of build, if your Special Spiral is just set up, then you can even just kill them on the retaliation with your Ignis with the help of Steady Breath, and especially the tempo skill, which can definitely help with this kind of playstyle. You can also invest into him with some more expensive skills like Sturdy Stance 3, which is going to be helping you quite a lot in the enemy phase as a tank, because guard effect is absolutely amazing for denying the specials of the opponent. And you can also just stack up even more like debuffs with lull attack defense and also ignoring any kind of visible buffs of the opponent to their attack, which further increases your tanking potential. So again, we're not going to be increasing the visible defense of Mordecai with any of these skills, but these skills are going to be adding to his combat potential, especially the guard effect here. And because he does have the follow-up negation, you can just run Glimmer so that if he's going to be denying the follow-up attack of an enemy, he can at least trigger Glimmer on his double attack and kill the enemy. So you can just run Quick Repose Sacred Seal for that, and Joint Drive Attack is a pretty good skill that you can get on Mordecai from the Divine Codes, and that can just help you nuke even harder with Glimmer. You can also build him up for Aether Raids offense in the Chaos season, and here, Attack Defense Unity can definitely help you against the Infantry Schools, the Chill Defense debuffs, and all of that. So you can easily use the Bulwark skill of Asker, and this is really amazing in the Chaos season because of its Obstruct effect and the fact that you can heal up the HP, so it's really amazing. And you can also run the Ideal skill that you get from Asker at the same time, but the Unity skill is going to be protecting you from the debuffs, so I do like it a bit more. And you can also just run Quick Repose so that you can double attack and Joint Drive Attack, which is going to be helping your far save tank as well for just dealing more damage. So in the Chaos season, only one save unit is allowed, and you can run a far save tank so that they can cover your other allies from getting sniped, and you can just give him support from someone like Elamine with the damage reduction, and he's going to be doing a pretty fantastic job as a melee specialist. You can also use him in Summoner duels as a frontliner, similar to what Asker is seen doing and Brave Dimitri as well. So while Mordecai does not have the flat damage reduction like them, he can still function with his sky high defense. So steady stance, sturdy stance, bracing stance are all good stance skills because they all give you the guard effect and they're really good for the enemy phase for tanking. So you could run bracing stance here, and you can also have the bulwark skill, which is just amazing again for summoner duels, just like it is good for Chaos season. So you can just have the obstruct effect, which can make it really annoying for the opponent's units, and you can just cover him up with a good far save tank, especially if you're running some beast far save tank like Fallen Edelgard or even Lion King Mufasa. And Attack Defense Menace is also a pretty good option here for Mordecai because you're going to be debuffing the opponent's attack and defense visibly, and then you get the massive in-combat debuffs with his weapon. Not to mention the defense buff of the Menace skill can help you just with the weapon and inflicting even more debuffs on the enemy. And you can run Escutcheon here because survival is going to be a lot more important for a frontliner than just killing. And there are going to be some wild threats like Plus and Merge Brave Selifs, so that's why having Escutcheon is going to be helping you. And especially the guard effect can help you against Brave Selif because he is going to be running Luna, and there's no float tempo yet, so denying his special is going to be helping you in the survival. And then Escutcheon is going to be helping you with Steady Breath for the survival, and the healing from the Bulwark skill cannot be understated because it is really amazing for the longevity. He can actually be a pretty nice unit to face someone like Brave Dimitri, and some of the melee nukes in Summoner Duels S do run Ruptured Sky, so again having the guard effect can be really helpful. And you can also just ban certain teams which are going to be problematic for Mordecai, so overall he works a bit better in SDS because of the banning, but still you can just use him in the regular Summoner Duels if you're a big fan of him. Now, he is amazing in Arena as a 190 BST scoring unit, so if you just want to invest into him for the scoring, then you can get the skills from the Divine Code section with Fortress Defense Res, Joint Drive Attack, and of course running Aether with the Breath Sacred Seal. So this is not going to be investing too much into him, but at least he's going to be functioning as a good score stick and still can function as a pretty good physical tank. But if you want to invest into him a bit more, then you can run Bracing Stance, which is going to be giving you the extra resistance, which can definitely help you against a lot of the dragons and also against the mages in case you have to take them on. And many of the cavalry nukes do not have access to null follow-up, so the follow-up negation of Mordecai can actually be pretty helpful so that he doesn't get doubled. Lull attack defense is absolutely amazing in Arena for ignoring any kind of visible buffs of the opponent from their rally skills, and it can also stack up with the in-combat debuffs of his weapon, so it goes really well with his playstyle. And the Menace skill and Quick Repose of course go well with his playstyle as well. Finally, if you want to make use of him as a distant counter unit, then you could do that, and by running Time Pulse, you can just bring down Blue Flame's cooldown to 2, and that allows you to retaliate back with Blue Flame. That can do the true damage with his weapon, and with his high attack stat, he's going to be hitting really hard. So this is a way of one-shotting a lot of the opponents that he's going to be facing, and it could be really valuable in a game mode like Arena. And while he does not have the highest resistance, keep in mind that Distant Stance, Warding Breath, and all of the attack debuffs can just help him increase his magical bulk. So this is a build that you can definitely use, but it is definitely quite expensive. And with the tempo effect from his base transformation, the ruse skills and the guard effect is not going to be a big problem for him. So he's going to be able to retaliate back with Blue Flame and kill a lot of threats on retaliation. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're trying to build up this new alt of Mordecai, which is definitely really good with his weapon. And if you enjoyed, then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I wish YouTube sub boxes were about as kind as Mordecai. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.